Is your job search stuck? Maybe you're not getting any interviews with employers. Or maybe you are, but no job offers. Or you may be new and not even know where to start. This is Charles Max Wood, and I'm releasing a new course and ebook on how to find a job as a software developer. The course walks you through the process of finding the types of companies you want to work for, getting their attention, and putting your best foot forward as the candidate they want. I've coached dozens of developers in looking for jobs and have been able to help several people find jobs within 2 weeks to 2 months. So whether you're new to development, can't find a great job that fits what you want, or are looking for remote work from an area without a strong tech community, I can help. Go to getacoderjob.com and sign up today. Hi, this is Charles Max Wood, and I've been asked more times than I can count, how do I stay current? There's a lot to this question, and I'm working on a solution. Code badges. That's right, you heard me right. Basically, the idea is that you come and do a code badge, and that gets you an introduction to a topic. Then you can decide if you want to pursue it further. But while working on the badge, you gain enough proficiency to be able to pick it up again if you need. A lot of technology comes through on the bleeding edge, and not all of it sticks, but the principles do. So doing badges on the technologies that will get you ahead will provide you with experience needed to stay competitive. Plus, it offers social proof that you know something about the topic. The project is on Kickstarter right now. You can support it and get on the launch list at codebadge.org.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another My Angular story. This week we're here with Mike Hartington from Ionic. You want to say hi, Mike?
Hello, how's it going?
It's going well. So you've been with Ionic for a while. You've also been on Adventures in Angular and JavaScript Jabber, I think. And you spoke at Angular Remote Conf.
Yep, twice.
Nice.
Yeah, I've been around for quite a bit. A little low-key.
Right. So you were on episode 109 of Adventures in Angular. You were talking about Ionic 2. We also had Justin Willis on that one.
Yep, we were talking about all the fun stuff coming up in Ionic 2 and the progressive web app angle that seems to be taking over every other framework these days as well.
Yep, and you were also on episode 64, and we had Matt Kramer on with you that time.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I've been around.
Yeah, good things. Well, I'm just going to jump in with these questions. I sent them to you beforehand, and we'll kind of see where they go. I do tend to stop and ask deeper delving questions to find out more about your background and to kind of get these stories, because the stories behind a lot of these tools like Ionic, or the stories behind how people came to them and got involved with them, your story is really what's interesting here to me. So, let's get started. My first question is, how did you get started programming?
Hey there, this is Charles Max Wood, and I just wanted to talk to you really briefly about Freelance Remote Conf. I'm putting on a conference for people who want to go freelance or who are freelance, and bringing in some of the experts from the Freelancer Show to talk to you about how to find clients, how to collect money, how to build your business, how to specialize, and much, much more. So if you're thinking about going freelance, or you're already freelance and want to hear from the experts on how to go, become, or grow your freelancing business, then by all means, come check us out at freelanceremoteconf.com.
My first question is, how did you get started programming?
So I got started programming kind of out of necessity. I did like a little bit way back in the day in like high school, kind of taking like intro to computer science, where we were doing Visual Basic. And that was like my first dive into it. And then I didn't touch it at all through college. And I actually was a designer. So going through designing, like graphic design courses and doing all that. And then we had our last semester course on web and web design. And that was kind of my first dive back into like web technology and programming again, and figuring out how can I create this layout which looks great inside of like Photoshop, and then utilize CSS, and how can I add this make a new alert, or like style all these different things, and make stuff actually happen that I knew was kind of in my head, but I didn't really know how to do on the web. So I started going off from there, fell in love with Flash actually before JavaScript.
Oh, just kidding.
Sorry.
It was cool technology. It really was.
Say what you want. Flash was was awesome considering that these are tools that I like knew, like a timeline. I knew how to do animation and I knew how to do all this. And with a little bit of ActionScript, I could like make something that was really interactive, and it was just so much fun. Got out of school and was doing marketing and design at a company, and one of the requirements is to do some like interactive product demos and create resources for sales teams, and so they can touch back with home base, so to speak. And after a while, like I dove into it, and I was like, well, I know some of this stuff. I'm pretty sure I could do it. And then they all was like, hey, great news, we got iPads for everybody. It's like, Flash doesn't run on an iPad. So I like relearned JavaScript. This was like 2010. Relearned JavaScript and just kind of been down the rabbit hole since then.
Interesting. So you said you did a little bit in high school, but mostly it was after you had done some design and other related work later on. So what kind of led you back to programming? Was it just, oh, well, I want to make these designs interactive, or was there some other path into that?
Kind of wanting to do things for myself, like being hired originally to be a designer who was working with developers. It was kind of this, here's something that I think would look great. It feels like it'd be an intuitive design, and it's like, I really don't want to do that. It's going to take forever. And then having a boss who was also very much like a visual person, he couldn't really, if you showed him something on like a computer and he'd look at it and he's just like, well, how is this going to work? And I didn't have Sketch at the time, so I didn't have like all these newer UI mock-up tools. So I would just go back and like code it all up, recode like all the interactions, how would like a form submission process work, how would like a search bar UI work, and just show them that. So it was kind of a mix between wanting to make sure my boss was happy and I didn't get yelled at, and trying to prove to like the devs like, no, I can do this.
That makes sense. I have kind of a similar experience, except I came up through tech support. Mm-hmm. And it was the same kind of thing, right? It was showing the devs that I had skills and solving a problem. And it's kind of interesting. Yeah, it's hey, I know what this should be, and I'm going to go build it.
And just kind of, prove you wrong. And I'm going to sit there and just keep that little, chip on my shoulder. And it's like, I'm going to remember this when I prove you guys wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I distinctly remember at one point I went to my boss and I said, I want to be a programmer. And he looked me straight in the eye and he said, those guys on that team will not let you be on their team. You're not good enough. And so, I, a few months later, I had a programming job at a different company.
When the boss and coworkers say no, just jump ship and go somewhere else.
That's right. It's surprising how many people move up in their career that way, though. Or maybe not so surprising, because people think of you as the way that you are when you come in. I'm curious, with your background as a designer, how do you feel that that's influenced your career as a programmer?
I feel like it's influenced quite a bit. Of course, like nowadays, I do a lot more in just like helping other devs with their issues or trying to come up with better solutions. I kind of approached everything from or at least try to approach everything from like a design perspective. As kind of cliche as that sounds, it makes sense because the main goal in design is when you actually finish designing something and everything kind of is out there, it shouldn't look like there's been actual work done. It kind of feels like, well, duh, this is the only way that it would have been done, or it should have been done. So I kind of go at it with that approach where it's like, how can you do as little design as possible or little as work as possible to make it seem like a natural fit.
Right. You don't want people to look at your interface or look at even your APIs or whatever you're working with and go, now, how do I do this? Or why does this feel unnatural? You just want it to feel like a natural outgrowth of how you solve the problem.
Right. You're even like going back to the API, like I don't want to have to think about how to use an API. I just like, well, yeah, of course, this is how the API just should have been done. Like from day one, this is like how everything should have been planned, worked out.
Yeah, that makes total sense. The next question is how did you get into Angular?
So I got into Angular out of necessity. This is at that previous job working for salespeople and trying to help them. I had built a bunch of web apps using Backbone, jQuery, and was kind of making my own pseudo framework out of that, and was just not pleased with it. It was very slow, and it was a lot of duplicate effort, and I spent more time kind of working on that and then adding features or working on the actual app. And it was around this time where I found Angular, probably around the beginning of 2012. And I was like, this looks interesting. I kind of looked at it a little bit more on and off over like the summer. And when I found, actually, funny enough, Ionic, and saw that they were based off of Angular, I was like, okay, well, I should probably give this like a legitimate go and learn this thing and actually rewrite my entire apps that have been doing in Angular, and that's what I did.
Very cool. So you essentially you picked it up. It's funny because everything I'm like, how did you get into programming? Well, it was out of necessity, which I think is so fun.
It's really everything like I've had to do or had to learn it's because I needed to. I hate learning, or I hate having to read or like study something. But like as soon as I figure out like, okay, I need to know this for my job or for like something else, it's like, all right, guess it's time to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and again, I mean, when I got into programming, mine was Rails, and I learned Rails because it was the way that the company solved web applications. And so I needed something that my tech support team could use. And so that's what I did. And there are so many people that I know that get into code because they had some business idea or some need inside the company they were working for, or some other necessity one way or the other for an organization that they were trying to serve. And they either couldn't afford somebody to come in and do it, or they just weren't interested in having somebody else solve that problem, or they'd had issues getting it solved properly. And so they go out and of necessity learn how to program, and then they figure out, you know what, this programming thing is actually a lot of fun.
Yeah, it happened to be at a great time too, because they were switching off from like a really old Cold Fusion site to like CMS. So all like big architecture and like all the backend and all like the really hard problems were already figured out, and I could just come in and it's like, how do I make this search bar animate? Ooh, this is fun. And just, kind of come at it as like, this is fun. I don't have to figure out all the hard stuff yet.
Yep, absolutely. So I know you've been working on Ionic for quite a long time now. Do you have any other projects before we start talking about Ionic that you've been a part of that you want to tell us about, that you've contributed to open source or that people might have heard of?
So for a time, I was helping out with a project called Angular Formally. Kent C. Dodds.
Yep. Kent's a local guy. He's a good guy.
Yeah, Kent's awesome. He had contacted a few people saying, hey, I'm looking to do some other what they call templates for Formally, for different like UI libraries. Like there was one for Materialize, there was one for Bootstrap, there was some for some other libraries out there too. It's like, yeah, I wanted to do some for some mobile stuff, and I don't think I was working at Ionic yet, and I was like, well, I've been messing around with it, and yeah, I'd like to help out. And even to this day, like it's a couple of years later now, I still get emails about it, and it's like, I'm sorry, I don't have much time, but I'll submit a fix here and there. But yeah, if you've used Formally before and used it with Ionic, I wrote those templates.
Super cool. So, one of the things about these, the stories and how you got into it that I want to dig into a little bit is that people, they come into a community and they feel like, oh, I'm new, I couldn't possibly contribute to a project like Angular Formally or something else, or they don't feel qualified to get involved at a certain level with a community. So I'm curious, how did you become involved in a project like Formally from the standpoint of you deciding, I can contribute to this and I want to contribute to this? Like, how do you make that decision?
It was really tough because I still carry around that strong imposter syndrome where it's like, I probably shouldn't contribute to this because I'm not like a real programmer, or like I don't know what they're doing like for real. Like I feel like I couldn't contribute, like probably a few years ago, I couldn't contribute to Angular because I just didn't know enough, or I'd probably get laughed away or something. But like after like taking some time, like looking at the stuff I write, it's like, no, I'm pretty damn good. I know enough where I can get myself into trouble, and I know how to get out of trouble. So I feel like that's where most people, like, as soon as you get to that point where you feel like something you're doing is worthwhile to other people, like even in a sense of like a Stack Overflow post, like go out there, find like a library or like something on GitHub, and like make that PR, because you're just going to get better for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is I'm pretty well convinced that we all have that imposter syndrome, right? We're all imposters. I know the things that I'm not good at, and I know the things that I tend to be better at. And sometimes I just don't give myself enough credit. And a lot of people just get hung up on I could never contribute to a project like that. Where in reality, I know that Kent now does mostly React stuff, and I don't know if he even maintains Formally anymore. And so somebody else has probably taken that over, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a major Angular veteran to do that work.
Right. It can be like someone who's still new, still learning a few things here and there, but just someone who has like that drive or like, desire to kind of like give back or work on something. As soon as you have like I'm going to work on this, damn it, and I'm going to, give it my all. That's all it takes.
Yep, absolutely. And the other thing is that even if you don't feel like you can contribute code, way back a long, long time ago, I did a podcast called the Teach Me to Code podcast. And I interviewed Dave Hoover, who wrote Apprenticeship Patterns. It's a book about, finding a mentor. And he talks about the concept of sweeping the dojo. And so you go into the dojo, right? And the guys who get all the glory are the ones who are teaching the karate classes. But the reality is that somebody has to come in and sweep the dojo. And if you're in there and around there and involved there, eventually you'll start picking up some of the ninja moves that these advanced people have that allow them to contribute to the community. And so if you want to go in and screen out pull requests or answer questions as they come in on GitHub issues or write documentation. I mean, all of these things are things that the project maintainer either doesn't want to do or may not have time to do all of. And if you can go in and you can clear some of that up, just answer some of the basic questions, handle some of those basic things, you don't feel like you have the ninja moves to contribute code, but you can still contribute in other ways that are meaningful to the project.
Like you said, documentation, like that's probably one of the best places. Like it's such like a boring part of coding and like releasing stuff. Sure, it may not be the thing that gets you like all the GitHub fame or Twitter fame, but it's like the most important part. And like even now, like as someone who works on open source, like anytime someone submits a PR and it's like to improve documentation, I have like a habit of putting that as like my priority and just like looking at that, reviewing it, and like, you are my new best friend for the next like 5 minutes until I accept this PR. Thank you so much. Words cannot express how happy I am that you made this PR for me.
It really is true. And the other thing that's interesting about that is that if you're asking questions just to use the library versus asking questions so you can take work off of the maintainer's plate by helping with the documentation, man, they are delighted to answer your questions. And they know who you are. So you get all of the cred by saying, hey, go talk to Mike because I helped him out with his open source project. So let's talk about Ionic. How did you actually come to be involved in Ionic? It sounds like you haven't been there from the beginning. So where do you come in on the Ionic story?
So Ionic was probably, if I got to pull back a few years, was kind of released, quote unquote, in its earliest form, like around November 2013. And I started using it to rewrite some mobile apps that were jQuery mobile in December 2013. So kind of as soon as it was out there, I wanted to use it. And then I just started hanging around on their Ionic forum. And this was back when there was maybe 1,000 people using it, maybe even less. And the daily active users were on the forum it was kind of, you saw repeat faces and you kind of got to know the people on there. And it kind of got to the point where, most of the work that I had been doing at my day job was starting to kind of, the project's sprints were starting to run down and we were taking like an internal break. And I would just hang out on the forum. And after a while, I think I even reached out to them first and was like, hey, don't know if you guys know who I am or, remember me. I did submit a few PRs and everything. Didn't know if you guys were looking for like anyone to officially help out on the forum. So I was very forward about it. I was like, please hire me. I would really like to work for you guys. You're all really nice and very cool. So yeah, I joined as like a part-time in March. And then by July, they hired me full-time. So I had like quit my other job and was like riding Ionic strong ever since.
That's awesome. I'm sure there's some lessons that we could pull out of that too. How long had you been programming at that point?
In honest, probably 2.5 years. Not entirely long, and not enough as someone who would probably have gone to like, not enough to know as much as the person who would have if they would have known if they had gone to like a CS program. So I was still very much like, I don't have a traditional programming background. I don't have a degree. I only know, like I said, enough to get me into trouble and to get myself out. I've had a few mentors at my past job who've given me a few more skills, but I wasn't really a programming ninja, or that they as the recruiters like to say.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's interesting there too. I mean, you got involved, you demonstrated a certain level of passion for the project, and I'll tell you, if I'm hiring people, I'm hiring for attitude over aptitude any day of the week. And
yeah, so, if you come at it with like a good attitude and like you're really just excited about something, hard to say no to that.
Yeah, well, I can teach you the rest, right? I can teach you the ninja moves for programming. If we keep using that analogy, but I can teach you to do the things that you have to do in order to get the job done, but I can't teach you to be the kind of person that I want to work with.
Can't teach you a person to wake up in the morning and is like, yes, I'm excited about this.
Yep, exactly. So that makes sense. So over the last few years, have you been out there mostly evangelizing Ionic, or how much do you contribute to it? In what ways do you contribute to it?
So it's been like jack of all trades kind of stuff now. Like I do talk, I do present on Ionic. I do a lot of help with the community. I do actually, ship commits to the actual framework, though very small features, nothing crazy. So I'm kind of all over the place in the framework and in the company in general. So it's hard to really pinpoint what I actually do.
Yeah, that makes sense. But, and it's a relatively small company too. So, there's going to be some level of, we need the problem solved, and who's in closest proximity so that I can reach and tap and say, do it. But yeah, I've seen you speak at a lot of different venues about Ionic, and including some of the conferences that I've put on. And it's been really interesting just to see how the framework has evolved and things like that. I'm curious, and this is the kind of the fourth question that I ask, and that is, what are you working on now?
So right now we're working on wrapping up Ionic 2, kind of working with the framework development team, like making sure the docs are in good shape, making sure that there are no major issues with the framework and that everything is as usable as it can be. And then, working on like a few side projects I have. Like I do a lot of stuff in TypeScript tooling. So I have like my own plugin for Vim, my main editor. And I also have like my own custom theme for it as well that takes up a lot of time on just maintaining and working on. And then when I have free time, like on the weekend, I do like non-programming stuff like woodworking.
That's really cool. So you have, so Ionic 2, from what I understood, was mostly just a port over to Angular 2 from Angular 1. Is there more to it than that? Yes
and no. It's still keeping in the same spirit that Ionic 1 had, where it was like similar component structure, similar kind of elements that you would use. But the framework itself has been completely rewritten, and a lot of the limitations that we had, and design flaws or design limitations that we had, it was kind of a chance to like rethink how do we redo Ionic now that it's been like out for 2 years and we've had all this time to like learn and figure out what people are trying to do and what people want to do.
That makes sense. And then with your Vim plugin, so is that centered around Ionic?
Not so much. Like, again, as everything kind of seems to happen in my life, it was out of necessity. I use Vim, and I had used many other editors and IDEs, and Vim was the only one that really kind of stuck with me and wasn't slow or sluggish. And as soon as people were like announcing TypeScript in Angular 2, I was like, well, it's this TypeScript stuff. I really got to use it. And so I ended up building my own like auto completion plugin for TypeScript for Vim. And now it's just been going back and like kind of making it on par with like VS Code, where I can get auto completion, go to definition, inline like kind of documentation on like, since there's like no mouse hover, like as soon as like your cursor just sits on the word or symbol for like a certain amount of time, it'll just display the information about it. So out of necessity, I wanted that, and I just wrote it. And it was an excuse to learn Python.
Gotcha. It's all about the snake, dang it. That was terrible. I'm sorry. I'm sick, so that's my excuse, right, for a terrible dad pun. Yeah, Python's an interesting language and kind of fun. Were there any lessons that you picked up out of that have influenced your code outside of building a Vim plugin?
Always be willing to learn and accept other people's help. Way early on in the project, I was a bit like over my head. And a few people had kind of like, said, "Hey, do you want any help?" And I was kind of hesitant at first because I didn't want them to like come in and judge my code. And it wasn't until like a few comments on GitHub later, and I just realized, what, they know about as much as I do about this at the moment, and this could be like not only a great opportunity for me to learn, maybe this is like their big thing to like jump them into like programming or like into some other GitHub project. Who knows? Like, I didn't want to like limit them and say, no, you can't help out on this, and then kind of deter them from helping out on any open source. So I was like, okay, other people can come in, and I started adopting, I think, what is it called? Like open source, where anyone who ships like a meaningful contribution to it, they automatically get access to the repo. So there's like 5 other people who are in charge of it. So I can just kind of sit back and relax.
Gotcha.
Hey everybody, this is Charles Max Wood. I just wanted to talk to you really briefly about JS Remote Conf. We just picked speakers. Things are looking really good, and we're really excited to cover a broad range of topics for JavaScript developers. So if you're looking to learn things about Node.js, about becoming a better developer, about deployment, about mobile development, and much more about JavaScript, then come check us out, jsremoteconf.com. You can also find it by going to devchat.tv/conferences and then picking the conference you want. We have last year's recordings there. We have this year's conference coming up, so make sure you get your ticket, and we'll see you there.
Gotcha. So the last thing that we do on this show, and I kind of have to get to because I have a call in about 5 minutes, is picks. Mm-hmm. So you've been on the show. You know what picks are. What are the things you want to shout out about that you've enjoyed over the last little while?
So shout out to Chuck from the Angular team for his awesome language service plugin that just kind of got released a few days ago. I've been following it like crazy and have already tested it out in VS Code, and it is pretty awesome. Another thing I want to shout out is Westworld. If you haven't watched it, watch it. It is so good. I can't wait to see what happens in season 2.
Okay, so that's ridiculous. Both because the language plugin that you talked about, it got a little bit of airtime on Adventures in Angular that we recorded on Tuesday. This will come out a few weeks afterward. And Westworld has been picked on about half of the My.js and My Angular stories that I've done so far.
It's such a good show. It doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, I hadn't even heard of it, but I'm going to have to go check it out. So
it's Anthony Hopkins. You can't say no.
That's right. All right, I've got a few things that I'm going to shout out about. The first one is a tool that I've been using. I'm using it more and more to do contact automation and things like that. It's called ActiveCampaign. For a long time, I've been using Drip for my email list management stuff, but lately I've just gotten into this. I actually have been using it to set up automation steps for my hiring process because I'm hiring an executive assistant right now. So people submit a job or they submit their resume and it immediately tells them to schedule a phone screen. And then I talk to them. I've been doing those phone screenings all day today. And I'll be doing a bunch tomorrow, probably a couple of in-depth interviews as well, because when they pass the phone screen, I just add them to the list that says pass the phone screen. And then it says, hey, I need you to take a disk profile assessment, and then I need you to schedule an interview. And I've also been lucky. So I guess my second pick is there's a local classified ads / job board out there called KSL Classifieds. KSL is the local NBC affiliate, and SL and KSL is Salt Lake. So they have a classified ads and a job board. And I would have to say that probably 75% of my job applicants have come from there. And so it's been really nice to actually talk to people and then be able to do the interviews in person. If they're not in Salt Lake, it's not a big deal. I've just talked to them over Google Hangouts or Skype where we can kind of get face to face. But yeah, having somebody local that I can actually go and sit across the table from and get a good read on has been really cool. And then the last thing that I have that I'm going to pick is the book that I've been following the process out of. It's called Who, and it outlines, the phone screening and the in-depth interview and just the entire process for doing that. So I've been getting a lot of ideas out of that and asking a lot of those questions. It also leads you to do some sort of major in-depth questioning, but that's all part of the process. And by the time I'm done, I'm pretty sure I will have narrowed the field to a couple of highly qualified people. So anyway, interesting things these days. But yeah, just to wrap up, if people want to follow you on Twitter or GitHub or just check out what you're doing, is there a blog or Twitter link that you can share with us that people can use to check you out?
If you just search M. Hartington, first initial, last name, I'm basically everywhere under that name. So pretty easy to find.
All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll wrap this one up and look forward to the next one.
Cheers.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.